And so I started to investigate just the North American accounts of the giant skeletons that were found in the Ohio and Pennsylvania Valley. And I'm talking everything from 10 to 12-foot tall guys found in copper armor. And the more I investigated, I found out it was a worldwide situation where we're talking some really big skeletons, all the way up to 36 feet tall.
If we only had basketball then, huh?
Well, I can tell you this, when some of these guys, some of the British giants, for instance, one guy specifically, listen to this, a guy by the name of William Joyce in the late 1800s, he could lift a ton dead weight, in other words, 2,000 pounds. And that you're only talking about a guy that was 8 feet tall. So I think the situation that most people find in history is there are too many question marks. And when you're looking at the temples of the world, and you're looking at all of the, what would you say, the answers that are out there, but seemingly are, swept under the rug, I think it becomes apparent that for some reason, someone doesn't want the issue of giants brought up, and that's why I spent 3 decades dealing with it. And as you know, the book has got on the front cover a British explorer with 2 12-foot giants from Kashmir standing over him. Now, again, this was in the late 1890s, and as early as 1970, in the jungles of the Amazon, there have been actual reports of people running into very shy natives who are in excess of 9 feet tall.
How tall do you think the little guy is in the middle on your cover of your book, Genesis 6?
According to they claim he's right at 6 feet. When I got that from a group of people in London that have the only photos of these guys around. Also in the book, I have a picture of a 12'2" Irish mummy, and it's fascinating because later in the show we can get into the mummy issue. But the point that's fascinating is if you take guys that are all the way up to 36 feet tall, 20 feet tall. The Emperor of China had 2 15-foot guards. Charlemagne himself was surrounded by rather large individuals. We have a Roman emperor named Maximinus who was a giant himself. His wife's bracelet, George, would fit around his thumb. We're talking about people that are, we're talking about people with big egos, big appetites, and incredible strength. We're not talking about the medical situation that you see sometimes on the History Channel where they show giants as being these guys that don't live very long, obviously like Andre the Giant, who was a wrestler. Right. We're talking about guys with unbelievable strength, unbelievable knowledge, and unbelievable wisdom. On the website, I even show some of the Incan kings, I-N-C-A-N, Inca, from the Inca Empire, basically in the museums of Peru, that have 4 to 5 times the cranial mass of a standard human skull. So we're not only talking about big guys, we're talking about people with incredible intelligence, and we're talking about an answer that obviously classical anthropology and archaeology, these guys don't want to deal with this. I think it was David Hatcher Childress that coined the word Smithsonian Gate. In other words, a cover-up of history that's rather pronounced. And when you begin to dig, as I began digging over 30 years ago, you can find out that the reports of newspapers in America, of newspapers around the world. Interestingly enough, after I did the last show with Art, somebody went on the website and they sent me from Eastern Europe, they've already sponsored I guess you'd say an undertaking to go into some of the caves where they found a whole, basically, cavern of giant skeletons. And in the New Ancient American, which is a magazine that's put out in America, they found the most contemporary find. It's someplace in desert Southwest, and it actually shows the pictures of the giants, shows the cave, etc. So basically, interestingly enough, too, is that when you look at this, you see that there is a very, very, how should I say, skittish archaeological base out there that doesn't even want to deal with this.
Well, do you think, Stephen, that these giants were regular offsprings of people, or that they popped up in a very unusual way, depending on the percent of population at the time?
Well, first of all, I believe that the reason I use Genesis 6, let me read this and then I'll comment.
All right.
Genesis 6, 1, 2, and 6 are kind of interesting because it gets into the whole alien, the whole Nephilim, the whole Zechariah, Sitchin, Anunnaki, but let me read it. It says this: "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children unto them, the same became the mighty men which are of old, men of renown. Now, there are two opposing viewpoints on this. During about the 4th century AD, the Catholic Church basically said, well, no, these were the sons of Seth. And the sons of Seth married the daughters of Cain, and out of good men marrying bad women came giants. We're talking about men, George, that had 6 fingers, 6 toes, and double sets of teeth. Now, that's kind of interesting because all through the digs in North America, especially in Catalina in California, Lompoc, where there's a prison in California, they found red-haired giants, 10 to 12 feet tall, double sets of teeth, 6 fingers, 6 toes. You go to South America, and the Mayan god Shambhalum had 6 fingers, 6 toes. And so I believe there is a supernatural element, and then you've got writers who claim that we were created by the aliens, the Anunnaki, and I obviously I don't believe that. I believe that all the myths of history center around this one thing, that basically supernatural beings had sex with earth women and produced giants. And it's in the Bible, it's in Genesis 6, Jude 6, 2 Peter, but more than that, and in addition to that, it's all through history.
So you believe that these giants are the offspring of
fallen angels.
Fallen angels from way gone back.
Well, from way gone back. And
wow.
It gets into the interesting thing. You know, if we go into, let's say, Greek mythology, we've got satyrs, and satyrs was a goat-like body, a human torso, and ram's horns.
Yes.
We've got centaurs, head and torso of a man, lower half of a horse. Cyclops, giants with one eye in the center of the forehead. And by the way, 2 months ago in Indonesia, there were actual cyclopean skulls found, one eye, giant, and immediately the standard, if you will, anthropological community came out and said, oh, these are just basically calcified remains of a normal skull. We've got tritons, mermaids, minotaurs, chimeras or chimeras, and it's interesting because there's actually a patent now with the U.S. Patent Office that combines human DNA and animal DNA. So when we've got a supernatural element inserted into the equation of, in essence, fallen angels even having sex with animals, and by the way, this is ancient Sumerian text, it's ancient Babylonian text. This is something that is through history. It begins to explain a lot of where the myths came from.
Let's get into Genesis if we can, without the biblical and religious twist to it.
Sure,
but
I'm
really
talking about it from a historic aspect.
Exactly, and let you interpret some of this for us, because it is there for people to read, and you've been able to pull that out when you have written about it in your book. But it is there, and it has gone on since the beginning of time here, hasn't it?
It has, and you know, it's interesting because, again, you know, basically you have from just the Genesis account of these fallen angels having sex with earth women, producing, again, a race of incredible people. You know, everybody's heard of David and Goliath,
yes.
But what they don't know is that Goliath had, you know, 4 brothers, and these guys all had 6 fingers, 6 toes. There's a guy named Og, O-G, not a hard name to remember, and some scholars place him at 18 feet tall. So from the Genesis account in the Old Testament through all of the the historical accounts through the different continents, whether you're dealing with South America, whether you're dealing with North America, the Europeans, the Asians, the Australians, the Greeks, everybody has got their records, their bones. And, you know, interestingly enough, the Aztecs, and there was a lot of chronicling of the Aztecs by different Spaniards that followed, especially their priests that followed the conquistadors. And basically, the Aztecs said their entire civilization was built by giants. Tiwanaku in Bolivia, up by Lake Titicaca. The point is that they have fantastic architecture that still no one can explain. Baalbek, the giant cities of B-A-S-H-A-N, Bashan, which were called the cities of the giants. So I'm talking about a time period when there were some really big guys. And see, in classic anthropology, classic archaeology, this stuff is basically taboo. They won't deal with it. And it's fascinating because when you go even to 1905 in the Phoenix Gazette, there are actual full front page stories about a gentleman from the Smithsonian named Kincaid who actually found caverns with giant statuary from Egypt, etc. And when people have tried to investigate, David Hatch, Childress, and others, I mean, it's fascinating. They hit a dead wall. It's kind of